So I think there is a lot of meaningful approach if the data is being used appropriately. And then I think moving forward, as we keep on saying, I think data is the new IPR. It's the new intellectual property right of any of the hospital environment in particular. And there are a lot of efficient and smart ways in which data and technology can be used to the advantage of patient safety and patient satisfaction, both ways from that point of view.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today I am back with one more session in the series of Honest Talk. In this particular session, we are going to know more about the future of healthcare industry. My name is Harsh, and I'm going to moderate this session for all of you, wherein I'm going to introduce you all about session and perhaps the person who is going to interact and address all of us. First of all, I request you all to kindly acknowledge and welcome the presence of our esteemed guest, Mr. Santosh Marathe, who is here with us. Mr. Santosh Marathi currently holds the position of Chief Operating Officer and Unit Head at Apollo Hospital, Navi Mumbai. His earlier stint was with American Hospital Dubai as a CFO, wherein he also led the EMR adaptability plan with HIMSS rating at 6. Mr. Marathi has work experience of around 27 years with the past 18 years in healthcare. He has been instrumental in multiple strategic advisory roles for building business alliances, project planning, service excellence initiative, costing and pricing strategies, physician compensation strategies, revenue management, and IT implementation. He has been a regular speaker on topics of big data, supply chain management, patient-centric care initiative, patient experience, finance and costing, IT systems, digital healthcare roadmap, revenue management, and so forth. So, first of all, sir, I welcome you to in this session. Thank you so much for joining and agreeing to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you for the invite. Look forward.
Thank you so much, sir. It's our pleasure. So, moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen, is the future of healthcare industry, tech-driven and agile. Healthcare has become one of the India's largest sector, both in terms of revenue and employment. Healthcare comprises hospitals, medical devices, clinical trials, outsourcing, telemedicine, and medical tourism, health insurance, and equipments. The Indian healthcare sector is growing at a brisk pace due to its strengthening coverage, services, and increasing expenditure by public as well as private players. So then my question to you is why still India ranks 145th among 195 countries in terms of quality and accessibility of healthcare behind its neighbors like China, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Bhutan, according to a Lancet study?
That's an interesting question, Harsh. I think while there are a lot of great work happening in the healthcare industry, as we all understand, in the Indian context in particular, I think there are a couple of deterrents in terms of this overall growth. I think the basic thing what we need to look at is the overall sheer population size. That makes it a little prohibitive to have that reach and access element being provided to all our citizens across the whole spectrum. And demographically also, India as a subcontinent is very vast and huge in terms of the overall spread. And given the lower GDP contribution of the overall healthcare, which is just below 2% as a part of the overall activity, what we need to acknowledge is that puts in a lot of burden on the private healthcare sector to provide and take care of the overall contributory health. The second important element why the ranking becomes a little bit low is also our element of insurance penetration. So our insurance penetration percentage is also somewhat similar in the range of around 3 to 4% in the overall activities. And that is the reason a significant part of the out-of-pocket expenses are still borne by the overall citizens. So this makes it prohibitive, both in terms of physical access, because hospitals are remotely connected in terms of those kind of activities, and in rural area, frankly speaking, there are not much primary care healthcare services which are available, are not up to the standard. So that becomes a challenge. And second is also the financial fiscal outgo part of it. So these are a few of the challenges. The third important challenge is the overall demographic of the disease profile that exists in the Indian subcontinent. So when we look at from a healthcare point of view, there is a new age concept which is known as NCDs, which is non-communicable diseases. So when we are looking into new concepts like lifestyle diseases, where we get into diabetes, where we get into bariatric, where we get into overweight, obesity is another challenge in terms of this thing, chronic kidney and chronic heart disease ailments. So all this put together, it really becomes a very challenging element for the public sector alone to cater to all these needs of the citizens. And very interestingly, we are happy in terms of the kind of approach which is known as public-private partnership, where there is a collaborative approach between the public health sector and the private health sector, and those kind of initiatives have started making some inroads in terms of providing good quality care in terms of those kind of regional masses and the activities. And another important element is standardization of quality. So in the recent past, as you must have seen, Harsh, there are a lot of initiatives in terms of standardizing of the cost. So there are standard parameters which are being rolled out by the government authorities in trying to put pricing capping and those kind of activities. But unfortunately, there is still a long way to go. Unfortunately, in the Indian context, you can have a shop license act and you can go ahead and open up a hospital. It is as simple as that. So unfortunately, unless there have been certain initiatives undertaken by NABH, few of the government authorities have started putting a consolidated roadmap in terms of enforcing that a particular hospital needs to have a basic quality standard. And another important element that we need to bear for Indian context as compared to the Western countries. In the Western countries, there is a concept which is known as certificate of need. So as and when anybody wants to open up a hospital, the regulatory authority looks at the overall dimension, the scope of activity that this hospital can provide, and also look at the community that it will cater to. So unless and until and there is a zoning, so what they say is between 50-kilometer radius, there should be only one multi-specialty hospital. That kind of norms are not prevalent at this juncture in the Indian subcontinent. Wherein you see hospitals which are just divided by walls. So practically speaking, it is all abuse of resources where you end up replicating the same kind of CT scan, MRI, cath lab infrastructure. And unfortunately, the access issue still becomes a challenge for the general masses. So there are multiple trends of this sort, which really poses a lot of challenges for a healthcare to be delivered in an efficient manner. But as we have seen in the recent past, I think 3 to 4 years from now, we have seen a lot of good vibes and good changes being undertaken by the government authorities, which is a welcome change in that direction.
Indeed, sir, you have given a very detailed overview, and I think the viewers, those who are watching this session, they are surely going to understand these things. And as you have very rightly mentioned, that our population is really a very big challenge for all of us. Sir, my next question to you is: artificial intelligence and robotics are making advance across the healthcare industry, from genetic testing and robotic surgery to cancer research and data collection. In dermatology, AI is already used in practical terms, where it is used to detect skin cancers through an experimental mobile version of it by medical professionals. Sir, my question to you is how actually AI and robotics are transforming the healthcare?
So I think what we need to again acknowledge is there has been a lot of adaptability of technology in a big way. And the main of the influencing factor is, I think, the usage pattern of the patients has undergone a sea change. I think most of the times when you see patient profile which are coming to the hospitals now, either they have an iPad, either they have a mobile set which they come into the system with. So when you talk about bring your own device strategy, which is the prevalent norm, which we keep on hearing in the healthcare industry, in the IT industry, I think a lot of data has started coming into the ecosystem of healthcare. Unfortunately, this data is structured and non-structured. Structured data is what we capture for patient health record, PHR, what we call it. So that is getting into a little bit more structured manner. We are looking at the demographics. We are looking at the overall analytical, statistical analysis of the patient data which gets populated. The significant part of the unstructured data, whether it comes on devices, whether it comes on wearable devices, whether it comes on machine interfacing solution that we talk about, there is a lot of data which is captured on Wi-Fi. So I think there is a lot of meaningful approach if the data is being used appropriately. And I think moving forward, as we keep on saying, I think data is the new IPR. It's the new intellectual property right of any of the hospital environment in particular. And there are a lot of efficient and smart ways in which data and technology can be used to the advantage of patient safety and patient satisfaction, both ways from that point of view. Just to give you a couple of examples in terms of this thing, as you must have heard in the recent past, there is a concept of 3D implants, which is a great boon from a technology point of view. And given the lesser adaptability of organ donation, which needs an enhanced awareness to be created in the community, I think 3D implantation has been a fantastic addition from a technology point of view, which has been given as a boon to the overall healthcare sector. And Apollo as an unit and Apollo as a group has been always on the forefront of technology. I'm sure you are aware that Apollo has been the only setup of proton center in South India, in Chennai. So we are only having the single proton center in Southeast Asia. So that's the kind of foresight what Apollo has in terms of technology. Coming back to your question, whether it is robotic or whether you see IT enabled solutions in terms of the overall element of this thing, I think this is the future of healthcare. I think earlier days, we used to look at historical data to draw some inference, look at trends. But I think the whole paradigm shift is now shifting where you need to get into future analytics. So is there a way based on the patient data that we have is to predict his future as to what can go wrong in terms of his overall healthcare status? So that's the kind of change paradigm that we are seeing. And this will be only possible if you have a rightful investment in data, all that structured and unstructured data, if it could be used meaningfully to try and forecast what could be the trending in terms of the overall thing. Again, just to give you an example, how technology can be used to the advantage of the healthcare industries and to the citizens at large. At Apollo, we have a concept of health check. Our overall focus from day one has always been on preventive health checks. So we look at preventive medication more than curative medication. So unless and until diseases are caught early on in terms of the overall prognosis, in terms of finding, in terms of screening or health checks on an annual basis, it has an ability to reduce the cost and also ability to give a good quality of life. So at periodic interval, we do health checks of most of the citizens who come to us. So typically when I do a health check for an individual person, I can get a question, it's so much, you are suffering from diabetic, you are suffering from back pain, so on and so forth. What happens is we have an artificial intelligence tool, which is integrated with our hospital information system. By doing that, we have an ability to populate a health check scorecard for a corporate. So if there are 500 corporate employees who are coming to me, I have an ability to generate a health check scorecard for that corporate. So I can present to them a data saying that 40% of your people are suffering from back pain. So there is something wrong with your sitting arrangement or ergonomics of the hospital, where we can approach that, do some work on that. There can be statistics which shows that 30% of the people are suffering from cardiac ailments. So can we run a medical management program for them? So rather than these citizens coming back to me with a heart attack or an ailment relevant to heart diseases, it gives us an ability to proactively approach them and put a medical management program beforehand, before the overall calamity arises. So this kind of tools cannot be possible unless and until you invest in technology in a big way. Another important element that you rightly touched upon, Harsh, is always an element whether technology is superior or human beings are superior. So I don't think it's an option of either or. I think it needs to be a blended version as to how human beings can use technology to its own advantage. Again, just to give you a few of the examples from a technology point of view. So in our hospital information system, we have multiple tools which are known as clinical decision support system. So what we have integrated all these elements into our clinical decision support system. So like, just to give you a case example, there are look-alike, sound-alike drugs where the phonetic sound of the drugs may sound similar. And at times a healthcare provider out of error may give a drug A instead of drug B because they are sounding the same, or the look and feel on the pack is the same. So what our hospital information system does is gives an alert to cross check and say that this drug sounds familiar to this. Are you sure that you want to administer this drug? So these are the kind of clinical decision support system which enhances the quality of care which can be provided to the patient, and definitely it goes a long way in aiding all our consultants, all our care providers in terms of the care journey. And robotic, as we keep on hearing, it is not a tool where a robot can come and operate the overall system on its own. A significant part of the time, the consultants, the surgeons need to invest for doing the robotic planning. This again is impossible without a human intervention. So while we talk about technology, I think how best we can leverage technology, the ownership lies on the individual care providers and the end users. So it's a blended version of technology and the human skills, which are at the forte. But definitely, as we look into the future, I think technology will drive significant changes into the cost of healthcare and also bring down the cost of healthcare to a significant element. And another important element of technology, what we have seen during COVID time, is the element of reach. I don't have to travel at particular location. I can reach out to my community by getting into telemedicine or getting into tele ECGs. So those kind of things really provide the kind of reach element. And again, as we earlier talked about the demographic length and breadth of Indian subcontinent, it gives me an ability to sit in Mumbai metro and reach out to remote parts of Maharashtra by getting into this kind of connectivity. So there are multiple avenues where technology can definitely be used to the advantage of patient care and patient safety.
Indeed, sir. Again, it was a quite insightful answer from your side and a very detailed overview you have given on the importance of data, how data became one of the most important resource of the 21st century, and how this means we are living in a world where World Wide Web is not the future anymore. It's present now. We are living in World Wide Web. And also, you have told us the importance of how the artificial intelligence robotics implementation can make healthcare easily accessible to all people around the world, around the country. I would like to tell my viewers that actually last time when I was in conversation with Director General of NIC, she told that we are looking to implement this blockchain into this healthcare sector so that the patient don't need to carry every time the reports, every time the previous consultation. The patient can go with free hands and can show the all his reports, and the means treatment can go well. So I think it's a major hit, and it will be beneficial for all the people around the world, around the country. Sir, in same context, my next question to you is, the healthcare industry remains one of the biggest opportunities for entrepreneurs as well as for investors. Innovative startups are utilizing new technologies to offer solutions that improve quality, lower cost, and streamlines access to healthcare services, as you have mentioned. Sir, my next question to you is, how do you see the future of entrepreneurship in India in the next 10 years, especially in healthcare?
So I think in the next 10 years, the coming decade will be very exciting in terms of this thing. I think there are a lot of great initiatives being undertaken by the public health authorities in particular. I think the overall roadmap of national digital blueprint, which has been flagged off by the Prime Minister a couple of months ago, has been a great initiative. I think the whole digital highway that they are talking about puts the pathway in terms of adopting technology in a bigger way. And again, I think everywhere, I think technology can really reduce the redundancy and the competency of the manpower, which is required. I think given the kind of data and statistics that we keep on hearing in terms of the mismatch, in terms of the number of beds and number of doctors available per capita, per citizen of India, I think technology can be a big boon. The second important initiative which has been undertaken by the Prime Minister's office is the Prime Minister Insurance Scheme. So every Indian citizen getting their own healthcare insurance, I think this will enhance the overall accessibility in terms of remote areas, whether they are in rural India or urban India in terms of this thing. So these two are main qualifying factors in terms of the overall activity. But I think moving forward in the 10 years, definitely I think there will be a radical sea change in how healthcare is being provided. I'm glad that you mentioned about blockchain, Harsh, because definitely I think this is the kind of roadmap which most of the Western countries are getting into. So if I get into the Indian scenario, as we touched upon earlier, because my quality standard, because my operating standard are not at the same level playing field. So while pricing would have been standardized by the government authorities, the scope of or care of services which are being provided are not at the same platform. So depending upon sector to sector, hospital to hospital, the quality of care gets on differentiating or keeps on varying. So unless and until the overall scope of activities are standardized, then and then only what will happen is I can rely very confidently for an outside lab test which is being undertaken in any outside environment. I don't have to repeat the lab test again. Typically, because there is lack of governance, as a quaternary care hospital, typically we need to think twice before we accept any report of MRI or CT which comes from a standalone diagnostic center. Again, I think there are pluses and minuses in terms of looking at those kind of elements. So if there is a standard framework in the coming years, I think there are a lot of initiatives which are being undertaken by the public health department to standardize the template and standardize those kind of norms. So whether it is lab and diagnostic departments or whether it is hospitals or nursing homes, I think they are coming up with a whole array of activities and standard frameworks and benchmarks which will be there. So this will avoid the duplication. So typically, I think as and when anybody comes in, obviously, as we all understand, healthcare is all getting localized and all getting personalized. So I think unless and until people have access to good quality healthcare, which is nearby to the area where they reside or nearby to the area where they work, I think this will be the norm. And as long as they don't have to duplicate their overall diagnostics or screening or any kind of workup that they typically do before getting into the hospital environment, I think this will go a long way again in terms of standardizing the overall thing and more importantly, reducing the redundancy. Or else you keep on repeating the same test because of the lack of confidence level in terms of the other intermediaries whom we partner with. So that will be one of the bigger change element what we are seeing. Another important element which we see happening in the next 10 years is a significant part of the healthcare growth will come from non-generic activity. So what we mean by this is generic growth happens within the hospital environment. So we may continue to expand our scope, we may continue to put in new technology, we may continue to get in new consultant. The non-generic piece is an interesting piece. So rather than replicating resources, we work on multiple public-private partnership initiatives. We partner with nursing homes, we partner with tier 2, tier 3 city segments and care providers. So rather than replicating the resource, we get them on board, we partner with them. There are shared resources, not only from an infrastructure point of view, but also the skill set which is required for the consultants, or it can be the paramedic staff that we can host with. Apollo being a quaternary care setup, we run a 450 bedded setup at Navi Mumbai, where we have many successful programs that we run for transplants, for pediatric cardiology, for basic neurosciences, for emergency and trauma work. So what we do along with the nursing homes and in the peripheral areas is we provide what is known as observership programs. We get them where they can get learning free of cost by getting exposed to the environment, which is qualitatively very enriched. We follow evidence-based practices as a part of the overall clinical progression, what we do. So those kind of exposures are really a welcome sign. And one of the obligation as leaders in the region is also to elevate the quality of standard in the region. So all these elements we are seeing in the coming days will shape up more, and there will be more of collaborative approach rather than working in islands. So you cannot be setting up a whole healthcare segment on its own. So I think, and moving forward, I think the way we look at the overall healthcare, rather than having a multi-specialty hospital, it will get into what is known as center of excellence. So once when you start creating a concept of center of excellence, say hypothetically, if you want to focus on pediatric cardiology, for instance, it will ensure volume, it will ensure develop skill sets, because with more and more volumes, the overall quality and the skill set of the staff who are operating on that also enhances. I think there have been excellent and impeccable models which are shown by companies like Narayan Rudralaya or companies like Shekhar Netralaya, where based on volumes, they have shown the cost leadership without compromising on quality. So those kind of pockets are something which will be moving forward in that direction in the coming decades. So all this blended approach put together, I think the vibes are really very good and exciting for healthcare in the Indian context. And definitely, I think the citizens at large will largely benefit from all these initiatives.
Indeed, sir, you have again told us many important things, and as you have told about the vision Digital India, and this is the idea we all genuinely appreciate this, the vision Digital India. And as we know that we are the one of the second largest tech savvy country after one of our neighbor, and we need to understand this. And also, as you have quoted the example of that, we have our best examples in our country itself, like the Narayana. And sir, I would like to tell my viewers that when I was in Harvard taking the lecture, Narayana Hrudayalaya is something which is taught us in the case study, and I think this is a great matter of pride for all of us. Sir, my next question to you is: most countries in the world have a dual system of private and public healthcare. Yet the public system is one that is most affordable to those having lower income levels. It is not surprising that in the time of crisis, public hospitals get overwhelmed trying to cater to the larger cross section of society. On the other hand, private healthcare institutions are regarded as both specialized, more specialized, and expensive. Sir, my question to you is: how do you see the role of private sector towards achieving sustainable development goal 3, especially in developing countries like India?
That's again a good question, Harsh. I think in the Indian segment, and Apollo has really taken a lead in this kind of segment. I think there are multiple models in multiple states in India where Apollo has successfully tied up with the government lobbies. And I think definitely government lobbies are also very forthcoming nowadays. They also understand the strengths and the opportunities of the private sector. So there are quite a few collaborative activities which are being undertaken. I think one of the classic example which I can tell you with a lot of pride and satisfaction is the element of how we coped up with COVID. I think when COVID started almost a year before, we thought that it will be here to stay for a couple of months and life will be back to normal. But as we all understanding, I think COVID is here to stay for a while. And the sooner we adopt to working and staying with the COVID environment, I think it is better for everybody. So there were quite a few collaborative elements what we partner with the public health authority in terms of providing those kind of COVID and non-COVID bed within the overall healthcare sector. And being a quaternary care in the region, one of our obligation was also to take care of the non-COVID needs of the society. Unfortunately, because of the lockdown and multiple activities happening and a sense of anxiety which was there with the citizens, there were a lot of unmet needs of the citizens over a period of 6 months, 8 months. We have seen in our emergency area people who have prolonged out of fear coming back to the hospital have landed up into our emergency area during midnight because this cases they just prolonged the overall periodic checks, periodic vaccinations that they used to do for their kids, for the adult vaccination also, whatever vaccinations they used to do. So under that thing, what we started is multiple initiatives with the public health department. What we started is known as Project I, which is Project Isolation, where we provided hotel rooms in collaboration with OYO, with HLL, and we have provided these rooms free of cost to the government authorities. So there were almost 5,000 rooms that we provided pan-India to the citizens of the Indian community. So that achieved twofold initiatives. It reduced the burden on quaternary or tertiary care hospitals of our size. And it also provided quarantining areas for the people who are staying in the remote areas of this thing. So that was one element which we successfully run with the public health authorities. Another important program that we run with the public health authorities was the convergent plasma screening program. So we had tied up with the Navi Mumbai Corporation in running across a convergent plasma screening program, which has affected giving lot of good vibes in terms of providing convergent plasma screening and donation, which were provided to a lot of needy patients who were recouping under the COVID at that point of time. We have undertaken a lot of other initiatives in terms of providing free COVID testing for the government authority people. And very recently, we embarked on vaccination booths. So we are providing almost 4 vaccination booths as a part of the overall COVID vaccinations which are available to the overall community. So I think as long as meaningfully the government authorities and private sector can work together. So again, I repeat, rather than replicating resources, rather than creating boundaries, I think as long as we can seamlessly create an environment where the strength of the public sector and the strength of the government private sector can be blended together. And this will give us the reach element to the remote areas of Indian subcontinent that we talk about. And also it will help the public sector to leverage the technology and the best of the skill set acumen which the private sector has. So, and at the end of the day, it should make viable financial viability sense, because at the end of the day, it should be done from a commercial point of view. So at the end of the day, you need to recover your costs as the stakes are very high. So as long as there can be a reassurance to work together in this journey, I think this will pave a long way in terms of providing good quality healthcare in remotest part of Maharashtra or any other state for that matter. And I think that will be a wonderful journey to partner with the government authorities.
Indeed, sir. It's really a very wonderful initiative led by the Apollo Hospital, and I think we all need to appreciate this. Sir, moving to my next question. After taking the lead on the supply of hydroxychloroquine, India is now on a way to become coronavirus vaccine hub to save humanity against COVID-19 pandemic. How do you see the role, leadership, and entrepreneurship of Indian pharmaceutical firms in fight against COVID-19 pandemic?
I think the whole Indian segment has come back a little bit more strongly during the COVID element. And as we say, testing times really brings the best in the people. And I think, as they say, necessity is also the mother of invention in terms of those kind of activities, as we keep on hearing. So in the Indian context in particular, I think COVID has really made me a lot of pride and privilege as an Indian I think because Namaste was adopted as a standard greeting sign across the global world. Forget about India. And I think as you would understand, in the COVID environment, lot of Indian recipes occupied a lot of prominence because I think the kind of diet, the kind of upbringing that we have, our immunity levels are one of the best in the world. I think based on that line, and having a young, very aggressive and very positive population also works to our advantage. So given those kind of things and the concept like Atmanirbhar Bharat that we keep on hearing in terms of Indian entrepreneurship, so pharmaceutical industry definitely has taken new strides. So whether it is remdesivir that we talk about, whether it is the vaccine that we keep on hearing, and apart from catering to the Indian masses, we are also exporting a significant part of the vaccines to the outside countries. So I think this has been a great journey up till now for the Indian subcontinent and large, and it gives a very proud feeling as an Indian that yes, we have arrived in terms of the overall healthcare inertia. And from a drug industry in particular, I think there are a lot of activities which can be attributing to a good qualitative aspect of healthcare. And as we all understand, from a cost exposure point of view, almost 35 to 40% of the overall bill at times can be contributed by the drugs alone. So as long as you can get into a overall meaningful alternatives which are available at lower cost without reducing the potency and efficacy of the drugs which are available. And I think we have seen a lot of Indian companies coming on board in terms of looking at revised formulary lists which are available in the Indian subcontinent now. So I think the going has been really great in terms of the overall thing. And also as we keep on hearing, Apollo has been again on the forefront for vaccination, where we have provided all our cold chain supply as a part of the participation to the COVID vaccination journey across pan India. So we have umpteen number of pharmacy shops which are available at every nook and corner of the Indian subcontinent. So those are hosting those kind of value cold chain in terms of hosting those kind of vaccines. So I think the pharmacy story has been really, really great in terms of the overall activities.
Indeed, sir. As you have mentioned that by becoming Atmanirbhar or self-reliant, we have shown the power of Atmanirbhar and self-reliant. And not only we have given provided the vaccine to our country, but also total 92 countries approached India for the vaccine. It's really a great matter of pride for all of us. Sir, moving to my next question, I think we have already discussed this part, but if I will move to specifically telemedicine. What we have seen is telemedicine increases patient engagement by helping them maintain checkup appointments and care schedules. Virtual consultation also make it easier for patient to reach out to their physician, report early warning signs or any health concerns, and follow through on their appointment. So my question to you is, what are your thoughts on the emerging role of telemedicine towards a holistic digital health ecosystem in India?
So I think telemedicine has been deliberated for a while in terms of the overall thought process. I think things have moved beyond telemedicine quite drastically, frankly speaking, in a good way. So I think again, one of the learning from the COVID is the first day when we started putting our plans together for fighting and combating COVID was the concept of contactless. So how do you make solutions to our patients and their families to keep the contact element less? As we all understand, the flip side or the pain point of COVID was because the overall viruses were spread by contacts. So that's the reason we evolved this concept of creating contactless solution. So one thing which we have seen a big surge in terms of adaptability of technology in a big way during COVID time. So definitely we have tools, what we call as is telemedicine is one of the aspect. Second is tele ECGs. With most of the nursing homes we run what is known as tele ECG, we put ECG machines over there and those reads are done centrally. It works like a hub and spoke model where all those nursing homes feed their overall digital archiving images to us and we read and revert back in terms of this thing. So there are dedicated consoles and hubs which are stationed in the main hospital. We reach out to those kind of activities over there. There is another model where we run what is known as eICU. So where I have a command center based out of the hospital, where my intensivist team can provide an oversight and 24/7 monitoring for the ICUs across all smaller setups. So if there are smaller nursing homes who host 5 to 10 nursing ICU beds, that is an element which we provide and reach element. And again, we keep on repeating, one of the advantage of technology is you don't have to travel all the distance. Within a fraction of a second, the reach element is always there. and the infrastructure gearing up, which we have seen in the Indian subcontinent, I think the quality of bandwidth has also improved quite drastically. So based on that, it gives us an ability to seamlessly connect. It's like physically as good as having my intensivist sitting in their ICU area. So it is that seamless in terms of the overall experience. And more importantly, it gives a real-time input to the intensivist where clinical decisions need to be taken. The overall continuum of care is not compromised because those kind of decisions are taken at the spur of the moment. And we have 24/7 coverage internally within the hospital. So that's one of the elements that we keep on hearing about telemedicine. Another important element of telemedicine again is an element of predictability. So whole healthcare segment is now moving towards predictive analytics rather than looking into historical analytics. So whether it is telemedicine or any kind of thing, teleradiology is another tool what we give into from an overall point of view, where again a central console is available for reporting reads. Also parallelly we do quality checks. So at times they do not refer all their tele ECGs or radiologists to us. At periodic intervals, we take a sample size to look at the efficacy of their reporting and competency of their staff. So those kind of quality programs also we run along with them. And the important part of technology or this kind of solutions is because all this data is archived in a digital mode, you can populate and start looking into trending, use it meaningfully as a part of the care journey. And this enhances the confidence of all our consultants because you are seeing a trend, you are looking at historical data. Everything is captured at the spur of the moment for each and every episode of care which is being provided to the patient. So I think again, telemedicine, as we discussed earlier, are all good kind of solutions which are here to stay from an overall point of view. But I think definitely it's a great activity to see the progress of telemedicine, what we have partnered almost 30 years ago from Apollo's standpoint.
Indeed, sir, it's hard to disagree with you. I think, sir, it's a quite insightful answer again from your side. I can say, sir, there's a lot more to learn from you, but today I don't want to take you much time. So moving to my last question of this session, sir, actually the question is, how do you see the scope of medical tourism in India?
Again, I think medical tourism is a little loosely used word in the Indian context. I think either people who are using the word of medical tourism neither do justice to the medical part of it or neither to the tourism part of it. So I think it's a quite loosely used word, but definitely there is a big potential to use and leverage medical tourism. I think as we know, 2 to 3 important elements which act to the advantage of Indian subcontinent. I think as compared to the Western countries, the waiting time itself, there is a big mismatch between demand and supply in the Western countries context, as you see in terms of this thing. The second flip side, which is contributing to the medical tourism, is the aging population. As you will understand, a significant part of the Western countries are taking healthcare facilities, which is known as assisted living, because those are end of stage life diseases, which most of the people are getting into. And that is again lifestyle diseases. As we talk about obesity, diabetes, these are the predominant activities wherein those kind of cases come into. And what has parallelly happened, while these are all ill effects were existing from a Western country's point of view, from an Indian subcontinent point of view, there are a lot of hospitals which are undergoing Joint Commission International, which is JCI accreditation. So JCI, which is a US-based JACO International, which is a US-based company, that's a golden benchmark of standard of quality of healthcare. So every 3 years we go through. Apollo has almost 8 or 9 hospitals which are JCI accredited. So that gives us a standardization and confidence of quality of service which are being provided. So the moment you are JCI accredited, there is a reassurance from the people who need to fly down from the Western countries to come into the Indian context. So 2 important advantages under medical tourism are, A, the waiting time is not there. I think luckily as compared to the Western countries, you can get in patients over here, you can treat them properly, and B, important time, the cost gets dropped by almost 1/10. So almost 9/10 of the cost is just done away with. So in the Indian context, when you are a JCI accredited hospital, when you do good quality care, and again, I think typically there are 2 or 3 ways to look at it. For the countries who are sending people outside their countries, they also undertake a significant part of non-healthcare costs. So there is a cost of trying to fly out the patient and their families out of their countries. There is a cost that they need to incur for staying of the families in the Indian continent. So they need to take care of the relatives. Few of the government authorities or ministries of health do pay an allowance which is being paid to the relatives when they stay in the Indian continent. So it's a mix and blended version, but definitely if done right appropriately. So what we do within Apollo is we take a two-pronged strategy. So rather than making every time, because one of the flip side of medical tourism is at times your post-operative care can become a challenging element. While people may come back for a surgery over here, but once when they get discharged and go back to their home countries, having the same continuity of care again becomes a disadvantage. So that is where Apollo has improvised the model. So what we do is we get into a blended version of on-site work and off-site work. So rather than just getting people from other countries flying into as medical tourism, we do a lot of medical activities on-site with them. Just to give you an example, Harsh, just 3 weeks before, my pediatric cardiology team flew all the way to Iraq. We operated 14 small kids out there, and complicated cases are brought over here. So what happens is it works as a win-win situation because the continuum of care is much more better because they are operated in their home country. And as we all understand, the cultural beliefs, the food and everything also has an influencing element on the quality of care that we provide. So if we could provide those kind of services in their home country, and parallelly, we also elevate the capacity building for the people out there. So we do a lot of cross-training initiatives with the Ministry of Health in those countries, and only complicated cases are being brought over here. As you rightly said, we also use telemedicine very effectively. So most of our patients undergo telemedicine consult as and when for post-operative care. So as and when they go back to their home country at periodic interval, we connect with them digitally. They share their reports. We get a team, what is known as multidisciplinary team. All our consultants sit together in a particular huddle room where we share the overall findings of the patient and we communicate to them the overall collective effort of this thing. So in that way, I think medical tourism has really given us a lot of good hopes and good vibes in terms of providing good quality care in most of the other country areas and those kind of activities that we are seeing.
Indeed, sir. Again, it was a quite insightful answer from your side, and I think the kind of energy you brought into the session was very inspiring. Well, the viewers who are watching the session, they are surely going to inspire from this. Thank you so much, sir, for joining and giving your important time. It was a very healthy discussion with you on the topic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Harsh. It was my pleasure, and I think it's a wonderful forum where you invite people to share their own experiences and insight. I think I enjoy most of your session, which I follow through very minutely and closely. Thank you, Harsh.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. It really means a lot.
On the ground is where I stand. Never give up, that was always the plan. It's so cold outside. I'm alone, I'm alright. It's so cold outside. I'm alone.